This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service showing exceptional films from around the globe. Get a whole month free at mubi.com/Spikima movies. In just a moment, I'm going to name 3 different films. All you have to do is picture one scene per film as quickly as you can. If you have no clue, don't worry. Here we go. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, Ari Aster's Hereditary. If you've watched Psycho, you could have thought about the third act reveal or whatever else really, but for most of you, it was probably the infamous shower scene. There are a few possibilities for Parasite as well. There's the final party scene, the song about Jessica, or any one segment from the montage sequence, but my guess is... And lastly, I'm almost certain that the majority of you chose the accident for Hereditary. Now, I've more or less played around the actual moment of impact to avoid spoilers, speaking of which, here's your last warning. But the 3 scenes all have one thing in common that makes them memorable. Early plot twists. Don't get me wrong, they're all memorable for other reasons as well, but this is the clearest point of intersection. Let's start with Psycho. If you didn't know, the victim in this scene is not a random character. She is the protagonist, the first character that the audience sees and follows for nearly half of the film. The doorbell moment from Parasite is the same. Up until this mark, the audience is led to believe that the film is about Ki-taek's family leeching off of a wealthy couple. But when Moon-gwang enters the house, it is revealed that there was another family essentially doing the same thing in a secret underground bunker. And the presentation of this revelation shifts the tone of the film from whimsical to downright terrifying. And last but not least is the accident scene from Hereditary that completely shatters the genre convention by killing the one character that would have been the head of the story in other such films, no pun intended. While they happen at different stages, these scenes all subvert your expectation by dramatically altering the narrative trajectory miles before the final act. Hence the name, early plot twist. However, this trick is not as often used as you may think, especially in such climactic manners because it greatly risks the integrity of the film. Instead, films generally feed necessary information gradually over time. There will be crumbs left on the floor for the audience to collect every step of the way. So, as powerful of a device as it may be, early plot twists are not the best fit for most stories. Except this one, which not only had one of the best executions of the technique, but also one of the earliest, happening in just under 13 minutes. This is... I stumbled across this film a few weeks back while looking for recent examples of heavily divisive and controversial works. After watching Speak No Evil and Coming Home in the Dark back-to-back, I was certain I've exhausted my spirit for the week, until Beth de Araújo's Soft and Quiet squeezed out the last drop of what makes me human and threw me in the basement to die alone in pain. Suffice it to say, this film is not going to land well for a lot of people. So, for the sake of cohesion, let's maintain a tunnel vision on select few techniques surrounding the early act reveal and ignore the irrelevant side dishes for later. Here's what happens. The film opens up with Emily, an elementary school teacher, in a bathroom taking a pregnancy test. After getting the result, she heads outside and runs into one of her students,
Brian. Hi, Miss Reef.
who is waiting for his mother to pick him up. They chat for a bit until the ride shows up and then go their separate ways. Soon, Emily bumps into Leslie, a mutual friend, near her next meetup location, and introduces herself as the organizer of the meeting. Together, they head inside a small church where the rest of the group awaits, and while everyone is cheerfully talking, Emily puts down the bowl and...
Way of saying thank you for coming. Oh, fuck, that looks amazing.
Revelation. The sight alone is repulsive enough. The pie looks horrendously mushy and overfilled, with the red cherry-like fillings oozing out of the wounded crust like human blood. But it's because of the abrupt transition in tone, from subtle and ambiguous to blunt and aggressive, that this already vulgar image comes across as particularly shocking. Think about it. Who is this character? What's her occupation? Why is she sad? Was the test positive or negative? Also, where is this bathroom? And what time is it? There seems to be a lot of information on screen, but in reality, nothing is truly substantial. At least, not yet. Once the woman exits the bathroom, you finally learn that the scene was taking place during daytime, presumably at a public bathroom, and the story will revolve around this janitor. The kid?
Brian.
Oh, she's back.
Hi, Miss Reef.
Ah, so she's a teacher, and that's her student. Great. But this
is a surprise for my friends that I'm meeting.
and her first children's book,
Little Snow was a smart and happy little puppy. He had a beautiful coat fur.
inaudible. As you can see, Soft and Quiet keeps the audience mentally engaged in its first 10 minutes by introducing a new question every time a previous one is resolved, actively preventing them from acknowledging the crumbs that, if dwelled on, could disclose the secret and lessen the impact.
Jeff. An inmate at the county correctional facility.
It's only when Emily uncovers the foil that the numerous red flags are resurfaced and the dots are connected, painting a picture arguably more distasteful than the symbol itself. And the best part is that the finished picture also communicates one of the most important ideas of the film, that racism is never soft and quiet. No matter how nuanced, the results are always damaging, with the threat of real violence ticking like a time bomb ready to explode. The longer it continues, the rougher and louder it gets, until...
Kinda looks like we're too late, though.
This is why Soft and Quiet is edited as a one-shot film, to show the same group of people all about being
Soft on the outside, so vigorous ideas can be digested more easily.
turned into absolute maniacs in a blink of an eye. Cutting away, omitting, or focusing on multiple perspectives would have created an illusion of natural transformation or accidental progression. Time passing, people changing, and events falling apart on their own, instead of highlighting the very people who are directly responsible for the violent outbreak that takes place in a single afternoon. First, let's consider how a scene would look in a one-shot film. Since there cannot be a cut, the camera must experience the film world just as a character would. In other words, the camera becomes an active observer or a passive participant of this assembly, which in turn influences the role of the audience to change as well. The vibrancy of the ever-present camera begins to take control of the audience as they reluctantly follow the perpetrators at every turn, before forcing their eyes open to another crucial message that racism can exist anywhere and stem from anyone. It can be both explicit and devious, written or spoken, from a caring teacher, a young retail worker, a store owner, or an ex-convict. There is no discrimination in discriminating. With this, the decisive movement of the camera reminds the audience that the film is purposefully bringing the different facades of racism together in this fictitious setting to capture its detrimental effects, and never turning away from the action only helps to shine a stronger light.
Hey, it's okay, stay.
Secondly, let's think about the flow. Unlike other works, one-shot films cannot jump between different points in time, which limits the story to a single day at most. Focusing on a small number of events may sound positive, but the confined narrative time span leaves little room for an extensive arc. So while the actual runtime may be more or less the same across the board, it'd be significantly more difficult to flesh out the characters, adjust the pace, and ultimately develop a compelling story with this restriction in place if you're not well-versed. But Soft and Quiet is well-versed. In fact, it is the restrictive flow itself that best illustrates the aforementioned concept of a time bomb. It's precisely because the film happens over the course of just 2 hours that the roughness of the sudden downfall feels more jarring, as it was with the pie. But what happens when the perspective is broadened from a small piece to the whole pie? It's true that a few narrative punchlines with some well-executed techniques cannot save a film from crumbling apart. They need to have relevance, a clear purpose behind them, so that the thesis is not lost in action. One of the most common criticisms for Soft and Quiet is that of unclarity. The lack of adequate retribution, coupled with excessive violence and heavy-handed messages, left a bad taste in many viewers, and I cannot blame them to a degree. If I may play the devil's advocate, I think a conventional final act of bloody vengeance would have further undermined the argument of the film by providing a reason to maintain neutrality. I do agree that this approach might do more harm to those who already recognize the problem and do little to shake those who do not, but it's still better than giving the audience an excuse to see both sides. The same goes for the heavy-handedness. The point is to blatantly reiterate the obvious, because there's a tendency in all of us to dismiss the indisputable. Being extra is sometimes the only way to get attention, and Soft and Quiet have the right to be excessive in this regard. Lastly, if you think that the characters are too unrealistic, first, refer back to the one-shot section of this video to understand the role of exaggeration. Second, remember that these characters reside in a safe echo chamber where they do not need to be indirect. And third, I encourage you to look around, because I've absolutely met people like this in my life. And all that aside, in my opinion, believability of the conversation is secondary to what the film is trying to do here. At least for me, this didn't bother me much.
Now, we are the best secret weapon that no one checks at the door because we tread quietly.
Soft and Quiet is not a perfect film, not even close. But for what it's worth, I think it did a great job. And for the tunnel vision topic at hand, it is one of the best out there. So instead of staying soft and quiet, I loudly urge you to give the film a try and see for yourself. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed this video. I always believe that it's really important to expand your horizon by watching as many different kinds of films as you can, and so I'm very happy that I got to talk about a lesser known film today. But even if you wanted to do that, discovering hidden gems like Soft and Quiet isn't the easiest task when you don't know where to look. So well, if you need a great place to start your hunt for such films, I recommend you check out Mubi, the sponsor for today's video. Mubi is an online curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe, ranging from works of iconic directors to emerging auteurs. And since every film is handpicked, it's a great way to watch films you already love but also discover new films you've never seen before. The current movie selections in Canada has a number of films I've already covered, from a niche film like Breaking the Waves by Lars von Trier, cinephile favorites like Lee Chang-dong's Burning, to global sensation like Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. The movie selections may look different depending on where you are, but do not worry, as they will always be worth a watch. And the best part is, right now you can try Mubi free for 30 days by using my link at mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. That's mubi.com/SpikimaMovies. So go check that out. And as always, that's it for me.